The Bodleian Library is one of the oldest libraries in Europe. Its collections include the Gutenberg Bible, the first book printed in the Western world, which dates to 1455. The library also holds a copy of Shakespeare's First Folio, 4 original Magna Carta manuscripts, and the Gough Map, which is the earliest recognisable map of the British Isles. These historic collections and buildings are still used by students and academics from all around the world. They also attract hundreds of thousands of visitors each year. The buildings used today date back to the 15th century, but the origins of the library come even earlier.
In the early 14th century, although there are a number of colleges that formed the University of Oxford, there was no central place where the university could come together, either to meet through its senior leadership or to study in the form of a library.
The Bishop of Worcester decided to invest his own money to build these facilities in the year 1320, here at the University Church of St. Mary the Virgin, in a room that still exists today.
Like all medieval libraries, it was in a room on the first floor because they were always worried about flooding, and the best thing to do was to put your library upstairs.
Until then, the few books that the university possessed had been kept in strong chests. But now there was a room that was specifically designated for the purpose of the preservation and the sharing of knowledge. That library began a 700-year history.
It was in the year 1488 that the building of the next university library at Oxford was completed. Duke Humphrey's library is recognisable for its starring role as the Hogwarts library in the Harry Potter films. The library was built to house a priceless collection of 281 books donated by Humphrey, the Duke of Gloucester, and younger brother of King Henry V.
Humphrey was a man of great learning who had mixed in the community of humanist scholars and brought back some of that learning with him in the form of books to England. And he decided to give his library to the University of Oxford. We don't know why, but it was an extraordinary moment in the university's history, more than trebling the size of its library in a single stroke. And the university decided that such an extraordinary act of generosity needed a building to match it.
And a building housing one of the greatest book collections of any medieval university needed tight security measures.
These books were chained in a manner that was familiar in the Middle Ages, before the days of tagging or any other security systems that libraries use now. It was an effective way of making sure that no one walked off with a book, but it did make adding to the shelves or rearranging the books very, very complicated.
But the library only lasted 60 years. During the Reformation in the 16th century, it was broken up. Many books were removed in an attempt to purge the church of all traces of Catholicism. The bookshelves were sold, and the library was laid waste.
Most of those books from Duke Humphrey's collection don't survive, although a few of them can be located in other libraries, and a handful have been acquired by the Bodleian, sort of regaining them.
It was Sir Thomas Bodley, a Fellow of Merton College, and from whom the library gets its name, who rescued the library. In 1598, the library began to be refurbished in order to house 2,500 books, many of which were donated by Bodley himself.
He came to visit the old library room and was shocked to see the condition that he found it in. And he decided to dedicate his own life, his own wealth, to refounding that institution, to rebuilding it, to furnishing it with books, and to provide the funds to employ the first librarian.
He was a visionary not only in the collecting but in the running of libraries, and his library was known at the time as an ark to save learning from deluge.
Today there is a Latin inscription that sits above the door to the old library, which translates as, "Academicians of Oxford, Thomas Bodley has built this library for you and for the Republic of the Learned. May the gift turn out well."
And it certainly has. Over the 400 years that have happened since, we've opened our doors not just to students and researchers here in Oxford, but to researchers from across the globe.
As you pass under Sir Thomas Bodley's inscription and enter the old library, you will find the Divinity School. Although not used as a library, this masterpiece of English Gothic architecture is the oldest surviving teaching room at the university.
The Divinity School was built as a room for teaching and examining in the highest subject of the curriculum in the Middle Ages, which was theology. So we have to imagine the Divinity School full of people listening to theological debates going on, being conducted from one side of the room to the other.
Adjoining the Divinity School is Convocation House, which was built as a meeting place for the university's supreme governing body. It also served as a home to the English Parliament during the Civil War. The room includes a curious hinged lectern, whose design gives an interesting insight into social history at the university.
Over the period of time, the number of lunches and dinners that the Chancellor has had to attend has grown so much that they needed to put the lectern on a piece of hinged machinery to enable the Chancellor to slide in and out of his throne without losing his dignity.
Today, the room is also used as a licensed wedding venue. Next door to Convocation House, you'll find Chancellor's Court, where discipline was maintained inside the university during the 19th century.
This extraordinary survival, an early modern courtroom, is still here to be seen in Chancellor's Court in the Bodleian today.
The early 18th century saw a spate of library building at Oxford. The building of the Radcliffe Camera, Oxford's iconic piece of classical architecture, was built as a memorial to physician Dr. John Radcliffe.
The Radcliffe Camera was a completely separate institution when it was built from the Bodleian, a medical library. The Bodleian needed more space, and it looked across the way to the Radcliffe Camera as the nearest building which it could acquire. There were ideas of building a bridge from the old Bodleian to the Radcliffe Camera, and designs were made, but that bridge was never built.
The impressive circular building is still used as a library reading room and enjoyed by millions of tourists who visit Oxford each year. Towards the end of the 19th century, as the Radcliffe Camera was becoming full, the Bodleian again looked for more space and this time decided to build one of the first underground bookstores. Now modernised and used as a reading room, the bookstore was named Gladstone Link in 2011 after William Gladstone, the Victorian Prime Minister at the time.
To Gladstone, the Prime Minister, was sometimes attributed the design of the bookshelves in the underground bookstore, and that's where the name Gladstone Link comes. He didn't actually design them, but he was, as a great bibliophile and himself a scholar, interested in how to store books and about mobile shelving.
The library was connected to the old Bodleian by an underground tunnel that is still used today. It is also underground in the library's portrait room that paintings of some of the Bodleian's 24 previous librarians are safely stored. It wasn't until the 20th century that the library had its first female librarian, when Frances Underhill was appointed in 1910.
Frances Underhill set a precedent for women working in the library. Until then, women would have had a much more subservient role. They would have been supporting male colleagues, but doing things that were considered women's work, like sewing books or making cups of tea or cleaning. Now, when you look around the library, you see women right across, the workforce, from, senior management right down to, support staff.
Many of these staff are responsible for helping maintain the collections and buildings which are so important to the history of the Bodleian.
The old buildings of the Bodleian, here in the heart of Oxford, are some of the most celebrated architectural structures in the entire world. But the fact that we maintain them as places of study and of learning, of the preservation and dissemination of knowledge, is absolutely key to their continued success and to the continued success of the Bodleian today.
The Bodleian Libraries is the largest university library system in the UK. As well as the central university site, there are 27 other Bodleian library sites across Oxford, including major research and faculty department libraries. With over 2 million reader visits each year, the Bodleian provides vital resources to support teaching, learning and research at the university. But in 2015, the Bodleian opened a brand new facility in the heart of Oxford called the Weston Library, which began a new era for libraries at Oxford.
Weston Library was particularly important in our recent history because it enabled us both to dramatically improve the preservation of our special collections, most importantly because it enabled us to open our doors to the public in ways that just hadn't been possible before. It made us a library of the city, but also for everyone.
The opening of the Weston Library to the public was enabled by an £80 million refurbishment project to turn a library, previously known as the New Bodleian, into this brand new public space and research facility. A huge off-site storage facility was also built in Swindon, with room to house 13 million items across 153 miles of shelving space.
The creation of the book storage facility enabled us to rationalise all of our storage in one place in state-of-the-art facilities, and it enabled us to empty what was the New Bodleian building and create the Weston Library.
At the centre of the library is Blackwell Hall, a modern and open atrium space.
The ground floor was designed to be a place that the public could enter freely, and we'd never had that before. They could see the collections, they could see staff and readers moving about in the upper levels, but they could also at the same time enjoy the kind of buzz of the ground floor.
The opening of Blackwell Hall also created a new space for public events.
The public events that we run have got content that ranges from music, theatre, art, pop-up talks, dancing, spectacular light shows. You name it, we're up for doing it.
Just off Blackwell Hall, the library has 2 dedicated exhibition spaces, which attract over 300,000 visitors each year.
We tried to get a range of topics, Tolkien, Shakespeare, C.S. Lewis, but also less known people. We are doing at the moment an exhibition on the woman photographer Helen Muspratt. A lot of what we are trying to do is about expanding our audience base. People who maybe before would have thought, oh no, that's an academic library, there's nothing there for me. So it's about changing that idea and saying, no, this library is actually for everyone.
The public engagement team are also finding innovative new ways to bring local communities into the library. They recently ran a groundbreaking project to co-create an exhibition with members of the Ethiopian and Eritrean community from Oxford, London and Milton Keynes.
It was basically to raise awareness about ancient and medieval manuscripts from Ethiopia and Eritrea. Some of the activities that we did was run some workshops, study days, special events. The project was pretty special because it was one of the first time that we co-curated with community members a display.
I'm originally from Eritrea. To be able to tell the community to say, well, Oxford has a collection and would you like to come and see or get involved? I think it's a great initiative.
We've decided that in the future, this type of model is going to be adopted for further engagement with other community groups.
The Bodleian also runs community projects with local schools. Each year, hundreds of young people are offered the chance to visit the Weston Library.
One of the aims of the project is to reach out to Oxfordshire state schools. We realise that there are many barriers to higher education and particularly to elite universities like Oxford University. And it is really our responsibility to try and break down those barriers.
I've been working at Cheney School for 14 years. We have a really diverse range of students from lots of demographics, including some quite disadvantaged backgrounds. And those students being able to come into somewhere like the Weston Library, to feel comfortable in this kind of environment is really important for helping them realise that places like Oxford University are just as much for them as for anyone else.
I'm 17 and I came to visit 6 months ago. Living in Oxford You don't really get to interact that much with universities, but then when you come here, you get to see what actually goes on. When I finish school, I want to be a doctor, so I'm planning to apply to medicine next year.
As well as working with local schools, the library is developing its links with organisations from Oxford. The Special Collections team recently acquired the archive from Oxfam, a charity which was started in Oxford in the 1940s.
The Oxfam project was probably one of the biggest projects that we've ever done in terms of archives cataloguing. We started out with 10,000 boxes worth of material, huge photographic archive, wonderful posters and communications and campaigns materials. One of the most amazing things that we have in the Oxfam archive is the first ever minute book that records the first meeting of what was then the Oxford Committee for Famine Relief back in 1942. And it's amazing to think that a small meeting like that in the University Church in Oxford could turn into the Oxfam organisation that we know today.
The Bodleian is also expanding its archives from Britain's modern fiction writers. Award-winning author Joanna Trollope has sold millions of books worldwide. She recently donated her archive to the Bodleian, including all of her handwritten first drafts.
It was a wonderful opportunity to be able to donate my archive to the Bodleian Library. I have a very strong association with Oxford. I'd been here as an undergraduate and I was interested in it being of use to people who wanted to write fiction in the future.
Joanna Trollope is one of the most influential writers, one of the most popular writers living. To have the drafts of her work, to have her correspondence, to have the ideas that formed her literary masterpieces is of great value to us, not only for our students, but be able to share with the whole world.
Continuing research also reshapes the Bodleian's knowledge of collections that are centuries old, as well as providing reading rooms for researchers to access manuscripts. Each year, the Bodleian invites a number of specialists from around the world to study the library's collections as part of the Visiting Scholars programme.
I came to the Bodleian Library on a scholarship to study a Persian manuscripts that tells us about how non-Arabs contributed to the making of Islam. The Bodleian has one of the biggest and most important collections of Persian and Arabic manuscripts in the world. So many manuscripts haven't been looked at by anybody. Thanks to this scholarship program, people are looking at these.
The Visiting Scholars programme and the community projects at Weston Library are some of the many programmes that have been made possible thanks to the Bodleian's generous supporters. The library is in a unique position to make a wider impact on public life.
One of the extraordinary things about the Bodleian today is that in a single institution, we support leading medical science through our 4 hospital libraries, right through to the disciplines of the humanities, the social sciences and the sciences, and our students who go on to such important roles in public life across the globe. But we're able to support the learning and educational needs of the whole world. And that's an extraordinary place to be, where a library is able to reach across the planet and to change people's lives.
Bodleian Libraries has been collecting items from across the globe for over 400 years. As a legal deposit library, it is one of the few libraries in the UK and Ireland entitled to claim a copy of every book published in the country. In total, the library holds more than 13 million printed items, as well as manuscripts, archive material, photography, paintings and maps. With a responsibility to look after this ever-growing archive, how can the Bodleian continue to make these important collections available to future generations?
The core mission of the library has always been about 2 things. It's been about preserving knowledge and it's been about sharing it. Fundamental to being able to do that in the future is going to be how we are able to embrace technology in a world that's used to having information at the click of a button.
Bodleian Libraries has been using technology to digitise and store content for almost 30 years. But in 2015, many of these items were made available with the launch of the library's flagship online platform, Digital Bodleian.
Digital Bodleian was hugely important because, for the first time, we were able to bring together a whole variety of digitised collections that had been built up over the years into a single place, where the user could search across all of those resources.
There are currently over 900,000 images available to view on Digital Bodleian. Every second, a user from somewhere in the world interacts with the Bodleian's electronic collections. The library has an ambitious target to digitise many more of its items, totalling 1 million images, a target that is likely to be hit sometime next year. But the team at Digital Bodleian has even bigger ambitions.
Ultimately, our aim is to digitise our entire collection. We have no idea, actually, how many images we'll need to create to do that. Our collections are so vast. It may take 10 years, it may take 20 years, it may even take longer. But whatever the length of time, we're determined to be able to share our incredible inheritance with the whole world.
Working alongside the digital teams at the Bodleian is the Conservation Department. A team of world-leading conservators are responsible for one of the largest conservation departments in the UK. Each item has to be examined and handled with the utmost care by the trained and experienced staff.
The Bodleian holds a vast range of items coming from around the globe and also from very different periods in time. Sometimes our work in terms of treatment can be very simple and we are dealing with a very small repair, or we could also do the conservation of complex problems, and these treatments can take up to 3, 4, 5 years. Each object can be a new challenge and a new discovery for us.
The team also have another important role within the wider world of conservation.
The Bodleian Conservation team also produces groundbreaking research into the materials and techniques used to produce our collections, and we are able to do that because we are in the unique context of Oxford University.
Once items are processed and digitised, they are sent off for storage. Many of the special collections stay at the Weston Library, whilst over 10 million lower usage items are sent to the Bodleian's state-of-the-art book storage facility in Swindon.
And we're very lucky at the Bodleian to have pretty much the best storage facilities that you could wish to have as an archivist. We have properly humidity controlled spaces, secure spaces. They're an archivist's dream come true, really.
Bodleian Libraries are also drawing up plans to expand the Swindon facility and build a brand new chamber. The environmentally controlled high bay warehouse will extend the size of the building by almost 3,000 square metres and allow the Bodleian to partner with museums and store additional materials.
In this new chamber, we're going to be storing ethnographic items like spears, canoes, parts of stone sculptures. Our expertise and our facilities are going to be made available to other cultural institutions to make it more efficient and more sustainable to store and preserve and make available the world's knowledge.
The Bodleian is involved in another new building project in the heart of Oxford. Rubin College is the first new college to be built at the university in 30 years. Incorporating the Bodleian's Radcliffe Science Library, the £80 million refurbishment project, opening in 2021, will transform the site into a global centre for scientific research.
Rubin College is going to be focused on graduate students, and it's going to enable our library facility to directly support a fundamentally important community dedicated to advancing knowledge in the sciences and the medical sciences.
Bodleian Libraries will also have a new home at the brand new Schwarzman Centre building. The £150 million project will create a new hub for Oxford's humanities with state-of-the-art academic, exhibition and performance spaces.
At the heart of that exciting, groundbreaking new facility will be a new humanities library. And that library will serve this fantastic community, the world's leading humanities scholars, and they'll be discovering new ways of working together, but they'll also be working with the public in the new cultural spaces powered by the library.
The Schwarzman Centre will also house scholars who will be working with the Bodleian on one of the library's key goals for the future, the preservation of digital data.
We're in an extraordinary moment in society. Knowledge is changing in the way that it is created and shared. All of this happens online, through email, through text messaging, through the web, through blogs. And great libraries, if they continue to be true to their mission on behalf of society, must capture this information.
This pioneering work has already been started by the Bodleian's web archiving team.
Over the years, the web archiving team have worked on a number of different special collections. Some of those things are ongoing topics like gender equality, online enthusiast communities in the UK. We've also done a lot of web archiving that reacts to specific events going on here and now. Those have included the Ebola outbreak, the death of Nelson Mandela, and the COVID-19 outbreak. One important thing to remember about websites is that they change very rapidly, disappear from the web, and if we don't harvest them, that information is going to be lost.
The team will soon be expanding their work in data archiving to include social media.
Archiving social media is very important for understanding public life at the moment. It captures our aspirations, our dreams, the things we want to change, and that data will be very valuable to historians of the future.
But capturing the world's social media use is not a simple job.
One of the challenges for modern social research is that so much information is captured on multiple devices through different social media platforms. Getting it into one place and in a way that protects privacy but still presents researchers with evidence to play with is a major important challenge for the library in the years ahead.
One of the immediate concerns for the Bodleian teams working on digital preservation is how to store social media and other forms of digital communication.
One of our big aspirations is to build the data science library of the future. Sociologists, historians, social science researchers of all kinds will need access to the data about public life in order to interpret trends and come up with good policy solutions to the problems we face.
One of the problems that we face right now is the COVID-19 global pandemic. Bodleian Libraries has been actively engaged in the UK's fight against the virus by supporting vital research into vaccines, treatment and prevention, which is being carried out at the University of Oxford.
Our healthcare library specialists have been creating data sets, they've been reviewing research materials, they've been co-authoring papers in order to support our provision of solutions to the incredible health challenges of COVID-19.
The Bodleians' response to the pandemic is an example of how important the library is in shaping the world for future generations.
In 30 years' time, in 2050, who knows what the world will be like? Who knows even what the university will be like? But with such a long, enduring history as we have, we can be sure that the library will be at the heart of the university's mission. We will become an even more digital institution by then. We will be preserving knowledge for the sake of learning and research and for the whole world.